Welcome to the Product Podcast, where we dive deep into the real-world challenges and victories of product managers, startup founders, and product teams. I'm your host, Lee Jean, and in each episode, we have authentic conversations that uncover the hidden stories shaping modern product management. In today's episode, I'm sitting down with Tim Henning, who's a product manager for a company in the travel industry. We discuss a lot about power struggles within an organization and how Japan's fear of failure stifles innovation. I hope you enjoy the episode. Hey, Tim. Thanks for coming on.
Hi, Lee. Thank you for having me. So nice to be here.
Cool, man.
Right.
So, tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. My name is Tim. I'm originally from Germany.
Mm-hmm.
Been in Japan now for 4.5 years, and my journey into product management was a little bit of a different one. I I, I would say. So my traditional background is finance, and w- I kind of got disenchanted with with the sector with finance.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it felt naturally for me to kind of like make this step into product management or into working with product rather than on the sales side.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I've been working in the IT sector now for a bit over 2 years.
So, what are the main differences between working in finance and then also working in tech?
Product management and banking in itself, I don't think they're that much different because you have to manage stakeholder expectations and all of these kind of things, but your goals are different. In product, you constantly concern yourself with building something great for your users, while also providing business value. Well, in the finance area and the banking sector that I experienced, it was more focused on sale, sale, sale.
Mm-hmm.
And at least in my experience, I don't want to step on any toes, but the person that you sold to was not really in the foreground.
Mm,
You kind of skipped over them and used. I saw some people use some tactics that I was not aligned with
I see.
just to get a sale. It's you know
Yeah.
that's just not my cup of tea.
Exactly, exactly. Well, yeah, I mean, sales is like, at the end of the day, communication, right? And some people communicate better than others. And like, yeah, those tactics, right? In salesy, that's why people kind of like are weirded out by salespeople. They're like, oh, like I feel like I'm getting tricked or something like that, right?
Definitely, especially with money or like finance. It's often not a product you can touch.
Hmm.
If you have an IT product or you have an actual physical product, you can touch it, you can see the quality.
Hmm.
But with a finance product, you don't really understand what you're buying for most people.
Hmm.
And then, for example, if it comes to insurance, you only really need it if something bad happens to you.
That's right. That's right.
But I have great respect for people who can sell, right? It's
Yep.
a tough business and a tough situation. And if
Yep.
you have the skills to do that, I really admire that. But I'm just not the type of person.
So I guess my question for you is, how did you see your experience with sales and dealing with that environment help you in product management?
So product management, and it's actually a really good question because at the end of the day, product management is often communication. It's
Hmm.
managing the expectations of stakeholders, keeping all the teams aligned. So you just jump from fire to fire and just try to put it out. So these kind of tactics that you learn in sales are really beneficial when it comes to that.
Hmm.
Because one of the things you learn in sales is that you have to mimic what the feelings and the behavior of the other person in front of you.
Hmm.
So if they're upset, then you kind of like have to understand that and mitigate this kind of issue, right?
Hmm.
Um, or if they lean back, you do the same. So if they create an open environment, then you join that open environment.
Hmm.
And very much the same in product management. Different people communicate differently. Different people, for example, if there's an issue, then the side that deals with that issue might be under a lot of stress in that moment because there are a
Hmm.
lot of complaints from customers. So you have to learn to adapt to these situations and to communicate the correct way.
Right.
And that's really where sales and product management are not that different, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
No, absolutely. I feel like, they can go hand in hand. I think that sales in general, I think people should learn from a young age because it's a communication tool and it translates to
Mm.
multiple different facets of life. Now, with regards to your background's mostly in business, right? How are you, I guess, how did you adjust to working for a technical environment? How was that transition for you?
That's a good question. So the transition wasn't that easy, even though product management is it's a lot of communication.
Hmm.
You also have to deal with a lot of technical aspects, right? Especially the company I'm working for right now is still in its kind of startup phase.
Hmm.
It's easy to understand the business side of things, but it becomes more difficult to understand the user side of things and the technical aspect, what's possible, what's not possible. So that's really something that I'm still sometimes struggling since
Mm.
tech moves fast. So you need to you stay at the pulse of time, right? You need to now AI is the next big thing. So and we have a lot of AI different AI tools. We have DeepSeek, ChatGPT. I think now Grok is also coming out.
Mm.
No, it's already out. We have Copilot, Gemini, and they all have different advantages. And every business wants to take advantage of these tools. I mean,
Right.
they're great. So staying, updated and at the forefront of being able to, understanding the business side and understanding the technical aspects is something that's, a balancing act. And I think that's something that I still, as I said, struggling with, right?
What sorts of things are you doing to stay up to date with tech and to understand tech more? Is it like sitting down with the development team? Is it a lot of self-learning that you're doing, courses? Is it trainings from the company? What types of things are you doing?
Actually, a combination of all of them. I'm lucky enough to work with really great developers in our company. So when I'm studying on my own and I have any questions about certain, aspect of a language or I'm working on something and can't solve the problem, I can always reach out to these developers and they will take the time to help me to understand the concept behind that. So that's really something that's great. But I'm also trying to stay active myself, taking
Mm.
courses, reading books, reading articles online. I mean, LinkedIn is a great source when you look for the right things. It's a great source to find papers and these kind of things that explain to you some of those concepts more deeply.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of also potential mentors to reach out to on LinkedIn as well, right? People who have done it before, right? In
Yes,
your organization, do you work with other PMs as well?
yes, we're working relatively closely.
Mm.
It's really a great benefit that
Yeah.
you understand a lot of different aspects, and in the end, they have knowledge that I don't have because maybe they have been longer in the organization than I did, or than I
Mhm.
do. So, I mean, it's a really great opportunity to exchange knowledge with everyone.
Right. Yeah, and those PMs that are working there as well, do they have business backgrounds? They have tech backgrounds? Is it mixed?
I do believe it's mainly technical backgrounds.
Mm.
Since until recently, or still for the most part, actually, we're having more of a technical product management role rather than a traditional product management role.
Mm.
So they do certainly have mainly technical backgrounds.
Awesome. Awesome. So tell us a little bit about the company that you're working for, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm working as a product manager for Tripla.
Hmm.
Tripla is active in the hospitality industry, and we're developing concierge managers, chatbots, payment systems for hotels,
Hmm.
so they can more easily and better service their own customers.
Hmm.
And yeah, we're doing some exciting work. Um, as I already hinted a little bit, we're digging a little bit deeper into AI,
Okay.
exploring the idea of how we can support hotel managers with AI.
All right.
At the same time, we're expanding in a lot of different markets. So you really work with in a very international environment, and you service a lot of different markets with a lot of different requirements. So it's never really getting boring, and that's something that I greatly value.
That's super important, man. Like doing work that you find energizing and interesting is super important for long term, especially, right?
Yeah,
So, I guess what are some of the biggest challenges that you're going through right now, and especially in hospitality, where, you have like, people who are on vacation or people, in that industry, they expect the highest level of standards, right? So, I guess what are some specific challenges that you're going through at the moment?
like as you mentioned, like people who spend you know thousands of dollars on their travels, it's something that is difficult to service to, right? Um, so I guess one of those challenges is really to get the users to book directly at the hotel, right?
Mm,
That's something that we're trying to kind of pioneer to help the hotels to get direct bookings.
okay, yeah, because most people use those other ones, right? The OTAs, I think.
OTAs,
Yeah,
yes,
OTAs, right?
OTAs, um, which is a great tool actually, but for the hotels it's always much easier if you book directly through their website, right? Um, because in the end, those hotels also want to make money, of course,
Mm-hmm.
and those OTAs often, you know, at discounts that they're paying from out of their own pockets or that they get somewhere else back. So they're always trying to, always have the cheapest price.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's something that we're trying to, of course, help the hotels with. It's for them easier and they have more control over if you can book directly through their website.
Mm-hmm.
And but I think what often many people don't realize because of the convenience of OTAs is that the hotels usually have the cheapest rate in their own websites.
Oh, did not know that.
Yes, so it's something that actually it depends on the OTA. Some have special offers, so it's a bit cheaper, but usually it's always cheaper on the hotel through direct booking because the hotels have to pay fees to OTAs, right?
Right.
So that they can advertise their inventory and this kind of thing. And this is something we're trying to help hotels with to, get users to book directly with them.
Hmm. Interesting. That sounds like a really good thing to help them with because, it just seems so simple to like browse and like check different hotel rooms all at different properties. And that's such high value there. How do you make that same experience for the user, there? It seems like quite a challenge. It seems like a big challenge. Yeah.
It certainly is, but it's great because I love traveling. And if you look at the statistics, Japan had just one of its highest months of foreign visitors, right?
Hmm.
I think I might be wrong, but I think last year was almost like 33 million visitors that came to
Wow.
Japan.
Wow.
It's a huge industry, and it's great for Japan
Hmm.
because we need the investment, we need the money from tourists.
Yep.
So helping hotels to achieve that to service their customers better is really something that I'm really excited about doing.
Hmm. And next month or this month actually, we're gonna have all the sakura blossoms going, so it's gonna be it's gonna be even more hectic, I believe. It's definitely gonna be even more hectic.
It certainly will, but it's great opportunity for everyone.
You guys will be very busy, that's for sure. Busy is good, right? That's good, man. So, tell me a little bit about the team, right? You're obviously working in Japan, but you said that you do have a more international team at the moment. Is that correct?
Um, yes, we do have an international team. So the product side is mainly foreigners
Hmm.
from APAC region. We have some Europeans, but the business side is mainly Japanese.
Hmm.
So we have a very international environment, but you have to be able to communicate with both sides effectively, right?
Right. Yeah. And you speak Japanese, right? Or no?
Well, somewhat, yes.
Somewhat. Okay. But do you feel that you're confident with that business type of Japanese at this moment?
I don't think I will ever be confident or you know satisfied with that side of Japanese
Mm,
because it's such a different language to what I'm used to.
yep.
I
Yeah.
think all I can do is just keep working and improving,
Yeah.
and you know, not being afraid of making mistakes.
That's
And
good.
because
Yep.
that's how you learn, right?
Well, yeah, that's the one thing that's very famous about Japan is that they are indeed afraid of making mistakes. So that leads me to my next question for you. And it's kind of like, what are some of the cultural, differences that you're dealing with at your, company now that have been kind of a struggle for you? Yeah.
So it's certainly not just in terms of my company, right? But I
Mm,
think it's a general problem in Japan, and that's really um, communication and leadership.
okay, interesting. Tell me more.
Yes. So let's start with, I think the easiest is leadership, and maybe that explains a little bit of the communication as well.
Hmm.
Leadership in Japan is not really existing, like in the terms that we might know it in the Western countries, right?
Hmm.
Especially, I know in America, leadership is a big thing,
Hmm.
and there are lots of coaching and classes to learn to become a better leader. But this is not very common here in Japan.
Mm,
So often people who are promoted into leadership positions are there because of seniority, not because they have the experience to lead people or the experience to make the decisions in this kind of area, right? And for me personally, age does not equal experience. If you want to be a great leader, then you have to show your qualities. And you can be a great leader if you're 16 or if you're 60. Doesn't matter. But you certainly have to have the qualities. So what often happens is that those kind of people go into leadership positions, and Japanese are very conservative. We don't want to take any risks. So what ends up happening is that all the creativity is kind of sucked out of meetings, out of everything. That's what I've seen so far happening in many companies. Great products are not developed by leadership. Great products are developed by a team. But often the leaders of are those people with highest influence. So they drive the conversation. They drive the development. So even though there are great ideas from other people in the room, if leadership decides they want to do what they want to do, then they do it. And that's not in my own case. It's from friends. I've heard the same thing that this, especially in traditional Japanese companies, happens a lot.
yep.
And I think it was Jeff Bezos who said that, but I might be wrong, that great leaders should always speak last because everyone else should be able to voice their opinions and their ideas. And that's something that I try to live by, but it's something that Japan struggles with. And that's also why Japan struggles to innovate.
Mm.
Why so much innovation comes from foreign entrepreneurs. So this is kind of like this kind of leadership problem.
Sounds like it. And how are you currently managing that at the moment?
Well, it's difficult since it's such a deep cultural aspect, right? I'm lucky with my company that we have some really great leaders.
Mm,
And even though they are Japanese, they especially our CTO, CPO, he in the past 2 years, I've seen him grown so much as a leader. It's incredible. And it's something I'm really excited about and proud
mm.
of that you have this kind of growth. But this is often not, the norm. So a lot of leadership comes from, the foreign side of employees, right?
Yep.
Um, we often tend to take more charge naturally. And so this is also something that I think we're doing right now.
Well, that's good. I mean, the future of Japan is going to have more mixed companies where there's going to be both foreign and Japanese leadership, right? And it's because of what you said. We need to have organizations that are more globally minded. And in the West and other countries, we are not afraid to take ownership for our mistakes, our decisions, things like that, because high risk, high reward, right? Um,
Right.
exactly, right? I think here there's a concept I believe called nemawashi, which means that everyone needs to make a decision about an important thing. Like you need sign off on every single one before you go ahead with something, and that's to pass blame off to everyone. No one wants to be blamed for a bad decision. They want everyone to be on board. But that slows things down and gets rid of accountability, right? Which a true leader needs to have.
Yes. I think that's also what you mentioned earlier. Like Japanese people are afraid to make mistakes, so they don't want to take the blame for something. Um, that's also why I believe Japan struggles so much with English.
Hmm.
If you want to learn a foreign language, you need to be able to make mistakes. You have to be confident or comfortable to making mistakes, because that's how you learn in the end.
Hmm.
Of course, you shouldn't make mistakes on, on purpose,
Right.
um, especially when you work with products and money is involved. But when you do make those mistakes, those are most often the most memorable moments that you will always remember and not do again.
I agree.
And it's just culturally different from from Western countries where we embrace failure and use it as a stepping stone to move forward. But this mindset is still not there in Japanese
That's right.
people.
You know, my what I always say is the real failure is the failure to make mistakes, right? Because if you're
Mm,
not if you're not making mistakes, you're not learning, right? Especially in the
mm,
classroom.
mm.
I used to be a teacher, so I fully resonate with what you're saying here. Absolutely. Yeah, so do you work with any, maybe people on your team where this has become a barrier to getting things done? Or any maybe customers or maybe other teams that you've worked on where you can maybe share a particular like story about this particular struggle?
It's really difficult to say. Like my personality does not really leave room for this kind of behavior, right?
Okay.
I have to be honest, and I think that's also one of my flaws. I should, listen sometimes more.
Okay.
I have to honestly admit that. So I usually try not to let it get to that situation personally. So I'm trying to be persistent and to push forward. But uh, there are certainly sometimes situations I think where people are overly careful just because, especially in the hospitality industry, as you said, like, hotels have high standards. So if there are any issues, then they are very quick to complain.
Yes.
Um, so that's something where, people are overly careful about,
Hmm.
I often feel like. I mean, we recently had a situation where it was actually my fault. We, I was releasing a feature and I followed the proper way of announcing things, but most other stakeholders were not aware of the way that we announce things. I don't know why.
Mm.
So we released a feature and I didn't make the final announcements, but I made all the other previous announcement, right? And customer complained because it was also affecting Japanese users. So they were fine with affecting foreign users, but not fine with affecting Japanese users. So that's something where I misunderstood the requirements, but that came to a very heated conversation. Um, but in those kind of things, no one wants to take the blame for things.
Right.
So even though it wasn't 100% my fault, I still took all the blame because no one else, because that's the way it is. It's my feature. I need to take the responsibility for it, no matter what. No matter how much percentage anyone has faulted it.
Right.
It's my feature. I designed it the way it is. I released it. I take the blame for it. It's okay.
That's what leaders do, right?
Right. I think it's just generally what great product managers should also be able to do. Right.
Absolutely.
Um, but yeah, these kind of situations are, I think, rare with Japanese people where they're trying to, push the blame to something else. But that's certainly not the truth for everyone, right?
Of course, there's always exceptions. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think there is a trend, hopefully with the younger generation, of trying to adopt some of these, things from the West as well, with regards to different ways of thinking. And yeah, I've seen a lot of like mindset coaches here actually, and like people trying to help them think about things differently because it's the only way that we're going to progress forward and innovate in Japan, right?
That's I totally agree with that. But I think what if you really want to change the mindset, then you have to focus on the younger generations generally.
Mm.
So what I'm often seeing happening is that those kind of, companies, they try to target the more like established managers and, CEOs, um, that have money to pay, right? Because in the end, it's also business, this kind of like coaching and mindset thing. But what we actually should focus on is the younger generation, junior high school, high school, because those will be the leaders of tomorrow.
Mhm.
They have the future. They have to live in this country and on this planet for another 60, 70, 80, who knows, maybe 100 years.
Usually 100 years here.
Yeah,
It's
exactly. So those are the people that shape the future, not the people who are in power right now.
mm,
So if you really want to change not only, the mindset, but also the country, then target the young people.
mm.
But it's something that I often see is still missing. Well, we have a lot of language schools here, right? Like these kind of like nurseries to teach English and so on. I think we need to be more aggressive with that. We need to make those kind of courses, those kind of um, coaching more easily accessible to young people.
Yeah, actually, you bring up such a good point, man. Why do we learn about these very crucial soft skills and like mindset things when we're adults? We should be learning about this stuff when we're younger, right?
Yeah.
We should be learning about this when we're able to absorb that information and put it into practice a lot sooner, and then continue with those trends later on. I've always thought that the education system in, developed countries around the world it just prepares people for a life of being an employee, right? That's why so many rich, like billionaires around the world always drop out of college, is because they know that action is the real teacher, right? Learning from mistakes, failing fast, and then moving forward. You bring up a really great point. It's just that's something I really resonate with because I see it all the time. Yes. Yeah, so you did talk about power within the organization and like how usually those older people are the ones that have all the power, So like, why do you think that, I guess, people revere people of those like certain ages, those certain age groups, and promote them and give them all the power?
No, it's really difficult to say. I think we're touching on a topic that, people have written thousands of books about that has been discussed for centuries. But my personal take on that is simply, at least here in Japan, older people have far, far outranked the younger people in terms of numbers. So all these older people, they are the ones that currently move the country. That
Hmm.
for one thing, of course, it's one aspect that you mentioned, respect your elders, right?
Yeah.
It's something that's very strong here in Japan.
Hmm.
But if you look back historically, I mean, Japan has always been a country of rank. You had your daimyos like the shogun, and it has always been kind of this kind of situation. And I don't know where I read it, but I saw an interesting quote that said that the samurai from old, when the government changed and they kind of got extinct, they cut off their head, their knots, and
Mm.
walked straight into the government. So these old values of the samurai and the history is still there, still prevalent. Um, so this is still something that's also teach from generation to generation, right? And now with the internet and being able to connect more to the not only outside world, but with each and every one, they can more freely voice your opinions. Now young people start to kind of like wake up, but they still feel abandoned because, as I mentioned, old people still outrank the young people in many ways.
Hmm.
So even though my young people might want to change in change of government, in terms of leadership, the old people are all the ones who vote. They're all the ones who still control the country. So unless we change this kind of like old people being in charge, will always continue.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Yeah, the population is not getting any younger. That's for sure. Nobody's having babies here for sure.
Not
Yeah,
at all. I mean,
yeah.
I personally am one of those people who doesn't want to have a kid, right?
Oh, me too. Me too. Yeah, me too. Yeah, I think that the times have changed, but if we want to get anything done, we do need more young people to get into these positions of power and show that things can be different. Because even though you're like promoting these people with all these years of experience, that means they're stuck in their ways the whole time. They're not learning the
Yeah,
new things because they don't have any incentive to. They've done everything this way. If it's not broken, don't fix it, right? That's
right.
kind of the mindset. Whereas like, oh, we could be doing it 20, 30, 40% better. Why don't we do it this way? Right?
Yeah,
And it's that fear of change, I think, is what you're alluding to as well. Yeah.
definitely one of those aspects. And another one is that we always see old people, as you mentioned, or elderly people. It's old people sounds kind of like a little bit. Um, we always see these elderly people, and because they have lived for 60, 70 years, we always ascribe to them a certain experience just naturally because they have been alive for so long. But what we need to learn is that this does not necessarily have to mean anything.
Hmm.
Just being alive for 60 years does not mean you have the right experience.
Yep, that's true.
So often you have young people who just graduate, they have great ideas, but they all shut down because everyone believes, they don't have enough experience.
Hmm.
So come back 10 years later when you have the experience. And we see it in job search these days as well, right?
Yep. Hmm.
That's something that we fundamentally need to change. And especially Japan needs to change.
Hmm. Well, you think about it, all these people are running these big corporations or these investment firms, right? And they see maybe a startup or a new company that doesn't have many customers or years of, experience, but are truly innovating and trying to change the
Yeah,
world. But they're like, no, come back when you have more customers, or yeah, I don't know, we're kind of shy or not shy. We're trying hesitant to use your product because you don't have you've only been there for 6 months, right?
yeah,
That's wrong, right? That's definitely wrong.
yeah. I think we should all have a chance, a shot at trying our best and innovating. But it's certainly difficult. The market is not getting easier, right?
Hmm.
Everything moves so quickly. And while I do believe that there are some great CEOs in Japan with great vision, it's not enough,
Mm.
especially in those old, one of those things you have in Japan are really these old traditional companies. You have the same thing in America and Germany as well. But these traditional companies, they are there for hundreds of years sometimes, right? They have
Yeah.
been there for a long, long time, and they're passing down their traditional values, and now they started struggling. I mean, look at Honda, look at Nissan. They
Yep.
have been there for generations, but they really start to struggle because, especially as a big company, you can't move as quickly as others can. You can throw more money at the problem,
Yeah,
but you can't move as fast.
that's right. Yeah. I wonder what the future is going to be like for these legacy companies in Japan, but also even around the world. Some of these software companies, like such as Google, Facebook, right? All these companies that have been there for so long, they move slow themselves now, right? They
Yeah,
are moving very slow, and they often acquire startups that are innovating. They often buy out companies that maybe help a specific thing that, they're
right.
struggling with. So what do you think the future is going to be like for not just companies like, Nissan, Toyota, those type things, but also software companies.
So this is kind of a tricky one, simply because software is moving fast. But honestly, I don't believe that they will extinct, at, at least not in the foreseeable future.
Mm,
And that's kind of like hinting at what I said earlier. They have enough money to throw at their problems.
mm,
So if there's actually something that could threaten them, they will just buy it up.
mm,
So that's also why we are kind of like struggling to see much innovation these days because those giants, they don't want to be threatened. So they just buy it up and they will continue to do that. But I certainly do believe that if they continue doing that, there will be a point where it's not sustainable anymore.
hmm.
And that's when all of these small startups will, be able to become stronger. But the thing about software companies is that we're in an age of technology and an age of software, right? And it will stay with us forever. I mean, I see technology as the technology we have right now as next big step into the future
Hmm.
because everything will start to be automated. We now have AI that can do so many things. Yeah, so the question is like, how long can these big companies sustain
Yeah.
themselves
Yeah.
before it goes down? But that's my opinion. What do you think about will happen to those big companies?
I
Tech
think
companies.
that we've seen a lot of, these big companies, really struggle to innovate and like
Right.
and then they play catch up, right? Like they try and catch up to these new companies. Like everyone's now freaking out about DeepSeek and seeing like, OpenAI and all these companies like, "Oh my God, like they're doing it with less budget, 10 times better than what we're doing. We need to catch up now." So I think, if they're not hiring the best people, which they often do, and if they're not being more agile and being more innovative and taking more risks, then they are going to falter. I mean, some of the biggest companies in the world have gone bankrupt before,
Of
right?
course.
I mean, it's kind of hard to go bankrupt when you're a multi-trillion dollar company like Google, but it's not to say that's impossible. Nothing I don't think is impossible when it comes to business, especially, you know?
Certainly.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see like what's going to happen in the future, especially with AI, like you said, in agents. But I'm curious to hear from you. I've heard from a very famous product manager in the US called Claire Vaux that product management is dead, right? I'm wondering to what extent do you agree with that statement? And how do you think potentially like AI agents may replace
I
you?
mean, I mean that's of course my personal opinion, but I feel like every few years we have someone saying this job is dead or this job is dead, or our AI is going to replace all of those software engineers. It's going to replace everyone. I really don't like this panic making that they are doing. But the truth is, we are all replaceable, no matter which job we are working in. At one point or another, we're all replaceable. And employers will replace all of us with a snap of a finger if they need to. That's something we always need to keep in mind. So, what we have to do anyway to stay relevant is to keep learning and keep exploring new things. But truly being replaced by AI, I don't see anytime soon. AI is great, but it helps you, do certain things much quicker or easier. And it's great tools to support you if you have to write huge documents or you have a question or you just want to have someone to discuss things with. I think AI is a great tool. But when it comes down to making those decisions, understanding, feelings is something that you always will need as a product manager.
Hmm.
You need to understand your users. You need to understand what they feel and how they feel, because there are requirements that they even might not be aware of. And that's something that AI will not be able to do for a while. You
Agreed.
need to really have a true understanding of everything, of every stakeholder, of every requirement. And AI can help you gather those requirements, can help you do those internet searches, do the market research, but it will not be able to make the right decision from the right time because feeding it all of those inputs and values is something that's difficult,
Hmm.
far too difficult at the moment.
When you talk about like inputs and values, what I'm
Right,
thinking of, for example, is like, let's say we're doing a product test at the moment or a user interview.
right,
There's a very big difference between a user saying a sentence and then seeing all the visual cues of their face, their reaction, body language, and all that
yeah,
as well, right? Because that all is something that we as humans understand, we can relate to. I don't think a
yeah.
computer can do that yet, especially. They can maybe do tone of voice, but even then, there's subtle nuances there of how things are said, the way that it's said, how fast it's said, that I don't think something can pick up on.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. I mean, AI is becoming smarter and it's becoming as smart as we want it to be, right? So there certainly are programs who can, with a relatively high accuracy, read your body language or read your facial expressions. But what I believe is something that separates us humans from this kind of AI thing is also our gut feeling.
That's it. Yeah, intuition. Yeah.
Intuition, yes. Like sometimes we see something and we know, or we have the feeling something is not the way we imagine it should be, right? But we can't put our finger on it. And this kind of natural intuition and then the resulting curiosity is something which will, or will AI will not be able to replace
Mm,
because you feed the AI data, but our brain does the exact same thing, but it does it, with every little detail. Well, if you use the AI right now, you have to give a very specific prompt that someone has to come up with based on their experiences, based on their understanding of something. I mean, I try to use AI in my job, and I use it often to do, documentation or to, if I'm designing like a small UI change or feature, I might use it to get me a text that I can put on the website or something like that. But there are so many issues that it still has. And the decisions, it just can't make them the decisions because it's not specific enough.
that's right. That's right. I've encountered that a lot as well. Exactly. You can only prompt so much before your fingers get tired. You know what I mean? And like, just like how much detail can I go into? And it still makes mistakes, right?
Right.
We're at the dawn of the AI era. It's only going to get easier, but all those data points that we get as humans in the human mind and brain, we have five senses, right? We're taking
Yeah.
in information that our actual conscious brain or yeah, our subconscious brain is, taking in information that our conscious brain doesn't even know, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes we act before we even think of what just happened. So I do think that, like you're saying, there's just not enough data that can help us make AI AGI, right? At the moment.
Yeah.
That's why it's taking forever. They're very optimistic, like they were hinting, oh, maybe it's going to be this year. We'll see about that. But
I mean, even if it is, you will always need a human. It's Everyone is afraid that I will replace them. And sure, there are certain headlines where it says, "Oh, this company is replacing their mid-level senior engineer or the mid-level engineers with AI." But it's only temporary. It's with every fad,
mhm.
everyone will move quickly, and then later on it will level itself out again, and you need those people again.
Yeah, I think it's just like any other tool, man. Like my laptop, if I just leave it here, it's not going to do anything unless I do something with it, right? AI is not going to,
Exactly.
like ChatGPT is not going to do anything unless I tell it what to do. It needs instructions. All computer programs need instructions, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, we might be wrong, but I'm excited to see what's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see. Let's see what happens, right? It'll be very interesting. The future of like tech in general is very exciting. Speaking of that, what types of jobs in the future do you think will come out of this, right? What are some things that you envision the tech industry will be like, or what we'll need?
So that's something very difficult, very unpredictable, I think.
Mm,
Um, I certainly believe that we will have much, much more jobs in terms of AI.
mm,
So I certainly believe that product management itself will move more into an AI sector. So you will need to be able to evaluate an AI, you need to be able to come up with ideas and lead products or lead projects that utilize AI or that
mhm,
start to bring AI more to the forefront. But I don't see otherwise too much change happen.
mm,
But what I do believe is that the hurdle for new engineers will become much less. At the same time, AI makes it a bit too easy. Um, a lot of things you do in technology solve problems. But if you rely completely on AI, it will take away your you know, capability of thinking, of
yeah.
solving those problems. And I think we will see a change in that kind of way, that the value of senior developers, senior anything will become much stronger, and juniors will have a much harder time
Mm,
because they rely too much on AI. And this is, I think, this the kind of you know way the progression that we're going to see coming now. Yeah, I think that's really something that we will see this kind of change towards AI and the kind of change of attitude to the current roles we have
mm.
due to AI.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I think that the future is bright and hopefully more people will be less scared of AI and more embrace it because, we're going to need more people that are AI literate instead of illiterate for sure.
Yes, definitely.
Absolutely. Well, really great insights today, Tim. We do have a tradition on this podcast where the last guest leaves a question for you, and then after you answer,
Okay.
you will then ask a question for the next guest. Okay?
Okay.
All right, excellent. So I'm going to go ahead and pull it up right now. So the question for you is, if you could give advice to your younger self, like let's say 10 years younger self than what you are now, right? What
Okay.
advice would you give yourself?
That's a very difficult question. I mean, there's so many things that I would like to tell my younger self.
Let's maybe top three things.
So I think the most top one, or the really would be, don't worry so much. Like, I always struggle to figure out how's the future gonna look like, and what am I gonna do? You worry that you're not fast enough, that you make all the wrong decisions. But honestly, when you're young, you don't understand the whole picture yet. Should you go to university? Do you gonna find a job that's really fun for you? Do you find a girlfriend? That, or a wife. You worry about all of those things, or at least I did. Um, that now seem so small in comparison.
Mm,
So I spent a lot of my youth just worrying about things like this, right? I'm not where I should be, and all of these kind of things. Just tell my stupid younger self, stop worrying.
that's good. Yeah, I agree, man. Like there's a lot of what you said, I did too. I think we all do when we're in our teens. We always figure, oh, am I going to pick the right job or the right major? When I go into university, what will happen? When am I going to get a girlfriend, right? Well, like, what am
Right.
I, where am I going to live? What am I going to do? We're always worrying. And I think a lot of it is pressure from our parents, from society, from friends. Everything puts a lot of pressure when you're in high school or you're, in university. But when we get to our 30s or late 20s and stuff, I think 25, I was like, all right, I feel good now. I'm an adult. Like, I can make my own decisions. I don't need to, But yeah, I totally resonate with that. Okay.
Uh, oh,
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I don't think that I will ever be or feeling like an adult.
Oh, really? Still worrying a little bit?
I think always. I think
Yeah.
without worry, I couldn't live.
It's good to worry about certain things, but not everything, right? Which is true. Which is true. Okay, cool. So, Tim, now it's your turn. The next guest is going to get a question from you. So, please.
I'm very enthusiastic about leadership, and it's something that we talked about a lot. So, for the next guest, I would like to hear their opinion on what makes a great leader.
Hmm.
And it's kind of like a two-parter. What makes a great leader, and how will leadership change in the future?
Oh, I like it. I like
That's
it.
something that I would be excited to hear more about from someone
Excellent.
else.
Excellent. Yeah, leadership is super, super like it's super difficult to like teach somebody how to do it, I think. It takes a lot of practice, a lot of experience. But yeah, it's a great question. That could be a whole episode right there about leadership for sure.
Well,
Absolutely.
you have a new topic for your next
There you
podcast.
go. Product management leadership. I love it. Awesome, man. So yeah, how can people connect with you? What's the best way to connect with you?
So I'm usually not a big fan of social media.
Mm, okay.
So the only thing that I really use is LinkedIn.
Okay. Okay.
So always feel free to reach out to me there.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. And yeah, I really appreciate having you on, Tim. I think that you provide really good insights into obviously working on a bilingual team here in Japan and then some of the, dealing with those cultural issues that we spoke about. Really great insights. And I thank you so much for your time. And yeah, I hope to continue more discussions with you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was really insightful. I know we kind of went off on a tangent and talked about a lot of different things, not just specifically product management, but yeah, I hope it was insightful for, all listeners or viewers as well. And looking forward to, maybe join again in the future.
Awesome, man. Yes, thank you so much. That's a wrap for today's episode of the Product Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Spotify, or leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps the channel grow. And if you want to share your PM stories, challenges, struggles, or insights with us on a future episode, please get in touch with us on LinkedIn. We'd love to have you on and keep this conversation going. Until next time, happy building, everyone.